Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available as podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Send us your questions and comments. DJ@artistfirst.com. Now, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man. And I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And Margaret is here, so all is well with the world. And we all know that that's not true because the world is going to hell in a handbasket. But that's okay. That's okay because we are in the world. We are not of the world.
My world is peaceful.
There you go. Margaret's world is peaceful. And tonight, my voice is a little bit gone, so I'm just going to struggle on. But tonight we are going to talk a little bit about, we're going to back up a little bit on the Soul of Everyman, as we do once in a while, just kind of to reflect and look at the bigger picture. And, there is a world out there which is going to hell, and it's always going to hell. And you can't kind of let it become, the most important thing at the front of your mind, occupying your thoughts. And similarly, there is an underlying life which has to be lived. And that life is not what is the world. It is not what is around you. It is what is within you. It is literally your life. And all too often, and I'm trying to segue into the topic here, all too often, we don't live our lives. In fact, we end up what we were listening to Tolle calls basically a story or a drama or a narration of your life. Most people spend their lives telling themselves what they're doing and what's happening around them. And like a good story or even a bad one, they have villains and they have heroes. Usually they're the hero and everyone else is the villain. You have victims and you have victors, and you have drama. Lots and lots of drama. And you have action and you're just you typically in these types of things are at the center of the story of you, which you are telling to you in full sense around in your head.
Have you ever wondered why it's so potent to listen to a story? I mean, that's a distinctly human thing to be doing. Animals usually don't tell stories. And I can't imagine a plant, but, I suppose you can have those huge mycosiums underground that have lasted for hundreds of years. But regardless...
Yeah, so, this sounds like a story. I'd like to hear more about the mycosiums. Moving on.
But, I mean, why is that so appealing? Is that something that internally you automatically do? It's like you just want to listen to what's going on. And then, as it unfolds, telling a story, especially one you've never heard before, is a wonderful thing because you're completely there. You're open, you're taking it all in, and a good storyteller gives you the character of each player and the background, and you begin to paint these pictures within your head. And it doesn't have to be the exact same picture for every single person. It's just a picture they're painting, but it's yours. But when you hear a story you've heard before, you begin to sort of anticipate the way that story's going. In fact, if you've heard enough stories, you basically stare and go, well, no, it's supposed to happen this way. Expectation comes in.
It's true. You get sort of critical about it. You say, why did the author do this or the author do that?
Well, why is this story being told this way? That's not the way it's happening, or it's not the way I'd like it to happen. There's a fine difference between those two, because the way you like it to happen puts a filter on it, and the way it actually happens is you have let go of every expectation, and you allowed the story to unfold in front of you.
I'd like to explore that, because you've got something there that I think is somewhat profound. When you're listening to a story for the first time, I think you're more in the presence state. In other words, you are, as you said, it fills your mind. You paint pictures. You are open and absorbing, and you're not in the I-centered mode. You're living. Go ahead.
You're trying to grasp what it is that's unfolding in front of you.
And I would hearken that back to Tolle says, well, travel is a good way to become in presence. And what he means by that is it's something so new and out of your ordinary experience that you have to open yourself up and perceive and not think or judge or name. It's like, fantasy is like that too, because it's so new. It's like, You're just you're in awe. You're in wonder.
The attitude that you take, I feel, is very important. Just a quick for instance, okay? We were walking with a friend, and there was a rose bush that we always pass, and it was in bloom. And I love looking at flowers. So I went over to it, and I had looked at it, and I said, wow, this is a very cool angle. This is to myself. So I took my phone out, and I started focusing on it. Well, the other lady decided, you're going to take a picture. She had to go over there and pull off whatever little cobwebs were there and try to straighten it out. And I was like, wait. wait. You're good. Wait, just wait. And I took a couple shots. And I showed her what my phone captured. And she goes, oh, that's beautiful. Don't correct it.
Right.
I was like, what are you doing?
Well, and exactly that. To relate it back to what you said earlier, you were looking at that rose as a unique event, as something special in and of itself. It didn't need to be corrected. It didn't need to be brought into the norms of roses, where this rose these petals have to be taken off. It's just the right color. No, all that kind of scene setting and storytelling on top of it wasn't necessary. But yet, I don't want to go too far away from your original insight, which is that the story that you listen to for the first time has you enraptured. It has you in a mode like a child. And the question you pose is, why do we enjoy stories? Because I think getting into that presence mode of just listening to someone telling a story, and your whole being really is your inner voice is quiet because you're listening to the voice of the storyteller, and your whole being is putting itself into the story and in essence giving it life in your imagination. So people enjoy movies, and they enjoy, let's say, books on tape and all that other stuff. But I think the stronger, or maybe the more vivid experience is the experience of the written word, in which you are just telling yourself a story, in essence, that has been written for you, or listening to someone tell it to you. But in the vein of just not having the book in front of you, just literally letting it come in, and using the words alone as the pictures in your mind. So that's pleasurable. I mean, I think it's more than pleasurable. It sort of nourishes a certain part of us, the presence part of us.
Right, exactly. You are present in the moment. You just open up and you take it in. And if you put no boundaries on it, everything that comes in finds a spot. That's what I love about that, because sometimes something will come in and it's the spot is in this very strange little place.
Something you didn't know you had even.
And it unfolds. As it unfolds, you begin to perceive certain things about the structure of the way you create things. Especially that odd little, it's like over there. Wow, why is that there? It's just wonderful because then you're participating fully in that moment. And I think that's why we love stories so much, because if we let go of these preconceived notions, then we can be there again in that wondrous moment. It's like the best analogy I can give is when you're young, you're a little one, you can't wait to get up in the morning. It's like, the sun's up, I'm up. Yay! I'm going to find out what today has for me. And then as you get older, you're like, ugh.
Well, but I mean, I think the interesting thing about that is it goes right back to what you said earlier. The first time you hear a story, the first time you wake up in the morning when you're young, life is a present thing that you have no idea what's going to happen next. And so it's a story that's unfolding in front of you, and you have to be completely present for it. And then we start to get, oh, it's the same thing every time, and we tell ourselves it's the same story every time, and you start to think, well, I know all the ends to all the stories, and now you're just critiquing it, you're anticipating it, you're getting ahead of it, you're saying what you would like it to be, and why isn't it that way, and it's no longer a story which you're participating in, it's one that you're critiquing and judging and, kind of rewriting in your head. And I think it translates into what we were talking about here. You're no longer at the 2-year-old level. You're living your life. At the whatever it is age, you start narrating it. You start saying, oh, there it comes again, that thing that I do every day, and then this is going to happen, and that one's going to say this, and then this one's going to do that. And and then I'm going to, I'll get angry because I get angry when they say these things, and I'm angry about that. And totally talks about the fact that not only are you narrating and telling yourself the story, but that you have the triggers, the triggers of thoughts, which then trigger emotions, or the other way around. Emotions rise up, which then trigger thoughts. And you're no longer witnessing the story or living your life. You're being driven, and sometimes driven into very negative places. He calls it the pain body, but it's in essence a drama which requires your participation. It's triggered, it comes up, it explodes into your mind. It has to have this little storyline which plays out in these well-worn channels, and you get to anticipate everything and say, who's the villain, who's the hero, me, and who's the bad, who's doing the bad thing and that I have to say is bad, and who's doing the good thing that I say should happen and doesn't, and then I get all my wound up into it.
Well, when that happens, where it's a replay and it's the rising up of the same emotions and thoughts, and emotion and thought are energies. They rise up, and you had mentioned pain body. Pain body feeds on those negative emotions and negative thoughts. So when you wonder, why is this happening again, it's usually because your pain body needs a hit. Tolle describes pain body as an entity that's living inside of you. And like everything that lives inside of you, you've got to feed it. So you wonder, why did this rise up again? And it's becoming aware of the fact that your entity wants a hit. That's a hard thing to put a finger on, to become aware of. Wait a minute, this thing is going to raise its ugly head. Can you become aware of it? And usually it begins with becoming aware of it after everything's been triggered and all the stuff has just exploded out of your mouth and caused the same pain. So now pain body feeds. My question is that where you want to reside? Or are you in charge of you? who's in charge? So when you decide, because you have to get tired of this, again, as Tolle said, people are addicted to negative emotions. So if you've identified yourself with that pattern, you got to understand you're in an addiction, and you've got to want to come out of it. So have you decided that you've hit the bottom of this? I'm not going to go there anymore? Because that's the only way it's going to happen. It will continue on and on and on until you're tired of it.
Yeah, and that, and we put up, I think it'll be up on the website, but this quote from Tolle is also very evocative of the same thing. I'll read it. Basically, he said, emotion in and of itself, is not unhappiness. Only the emotion plus an unhappy story is unhappiness. So it requires, the pain body requires feeding, but it also gets that feeding by taking over your story. And if you're very used to, let me just say that there's two different states you can be in. You can be in the state of always being used to living your life and seeing everything as it comes and being very aware. And pain body may still be there, and it may get triggered, and it may come up. But if you're in the state of always living your life, you're going to see the pain body. You're going to say, oh, here it comes again. Remember the little monk who gave us the story about his fear. And after a while, he got to the point where, yes, the fear was still there, but when he was triggered, it would come up and say, oh, it's fear. My old friend. Fear's here for a little while. Fear will be here, and I'll watch fear, and then fear will go away. And in that case, you're aware, and you're not feeding the pain body, because the pain body requires you to give it a story, to make it negative, to give it back your thoughts and energies, and amplify up that emotion, and then feed it back in, because it can't just eat on itself. It needs part of you, part of your current self, to eat.
It needs to be the driver of who you are. When you identify this, like the little monk did, and said, oh, it's pain, it's fear, it's here for a period of time, fear doesn't overtake the monk. That's the big difference. It's understanding that it is a perspective, and you do not permit fear to take control of you. You understand, yes, you are fear, and yes, there is a place for you right there. So, okay, let it out, and okay, that's it.
Right, and you haven't fed it. In fact, you've even maybe dispersed it a little.
The idea is to transform your fear. So you're in the process of transforming the fear, as opposed to some people say, oh, you got to kill it. It's like, no, it's all part of you. It's all part of you. If you think that you have absolutely no fear, then you've shoved it under the table somewhere. You've got to understand, as a human being, there are many negative parts to you, and because you just don't want to see it, basically makes it difficult to process. And you might be a very difficult person to be living with, because everything that you do is motivated by unseen negative emotions.
So who you're talking about. No, it's true. It's true. I don't mean to make light of it. It's so true. You know, the monk in his early days allowed fear to take him over, and it paralyzed him, and he got tired of it, which is what you just said.
Right.
And then he decided that he was going to, in essence, he said these words: I'm going to make a friend of my fear. In essence, give it a place, but not allow it to take over.
And that's really what consciousness is about. You make a place for all those parts of you. And when you do that, you also realize what doesn't belong to you. There are things you've accepted that aren't yours.
Yeah.
It's from somebody else or someone in the family or some past thing. And you don't need them. It's not really yours. So you have to just let those go.
Which you used to give them a name. It wasn't pain body. It was something else, like a bloodline.
Right. There is, well, that's a whole another topic right there.
Yeah.
What you inherit from your family,
Mm.
because there are bloodline energies that get passed from parent to child and all the way down the line, and they can only exist if they're fed. That's the truth of it. So if you recognize some bloodline tendency, like anger is a part of your family, and it was always there, but, you know, it was always in the family, was never displayed outside the family, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You have to make the choice that you're not going to pass that along to your child. Because you realize when you're in that point, when in that anger, there's something wrong here. It almost feels like a possession. Because you're not really, that's not me, but it's working through me. And it's an awful feeling when you begin to perceive that. It's like, ew. No, I am in charge of me. Do not give permission for that. Even though you may be some sort of like close relative, I still don't give permission for that. What? So that's when you begin to work out what you've got to do to purge that from your physical being, your energetic being. And as you do that, you actually begin to purge it out of the bloodline, which is a marvelous thing. In fact, I believe it's 3 generations forward, 3 generations back get purged when you decide to do something like that. And that's a very heavy task because you have to be super aware of what's going on and not give in. I mean, like it becomes a war because there's battle after battle after battle after battle with yourself, which is exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, but to bring it, you know, this idea of the bloodline is another type of manifestation of the pain body. In fact, the entity, which is the pain body, may not have originated in you. It may have been handed to you or handed down through the generations to you. And yet, as you said, if you take it, become aware of it, put it into presence, give it a place, purge it, which is a process. It's not something you just say one day, hey, it's all gone, the pain body's gone. No, then you're just hiding it away. You do that draw that kind of bright line between living and narrating. That the narrating of your life, you know, telling the story, includes the stories that the pain body wants to hear or that the pain body wants to push into your consciousness or into your mental awareness and have it respond. The pain body rises up like emotion rises up. The bloodline energy rises up. It is triggered by something which you may not even understand, you know, something that came in from very long ago. Spikes into your consciousness and hooks a thought. You know, these people, whoever they are, always do these terrible things, and I hate them for it, and then it starts to amplify that. Yes, and that's why I'm angry, and I hate when they make me angry, and why do I have to be angry? And it as totally calls it the loop, you know, very German, the loop, and you know, so but it is. And Ekman also talks about this, that the emotion triggers thought, and then thought triggers emotion, and you see it displayed in the body, you know, in the physiological reaction, in the face, in the actual physical reaction. And if you were able to look at the energies, you know, the best we have now, I guess, would be like those PET scans or whatever, those, you know, where they can actually look at the metabolic changes in the brain. But what Tolle says is we're not seeing the actual energy. We're just seeing an echo of the energy, that you can see the metabolic changes in the brain. The actual energy is there, and it is an entity. emotion and thought bound together in this terrible swirling cycle that takes you over, pushes you completely out of consciousness, makes you into an automaton following a program that may have originated 3 generations ago.
Right. And that's, frankly, you've basically described a mob mentality.
Yeah.
That is the foundation of a mob mentality. And you must decide for yourself whether or not you are in charge of you or not. It is the hardest thing you are ever going to do in your life, to be aware and in charge of you. Your decisions, your emotions, your thoughts. Trying to discipline your thoughts is like trying to herd cats. Very difficult. Lifetimes, in fact, for many monks, they basically say, I have to come back again. I can't get these thoughts to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's the central, some of the central tenets of meditation, and some of the Buddhist teachings are all about guarding your thoughts.
Right. And it's fascinating, really, once you begin to look into this. Those are thoughts, and now your emotions. Trying to marshal that so that, first of all, it doesn't become destructive. And then to understand that these are aspects of you. It's there. It's so. There's so much there. Getting to know your own thoughts and your own emotions.
Yeah, I think it totally mentioned in the show we saw, one of the shows we saw, that and the Dalai Lama, and interestingly Ekman too, all from different aspects, have said the same thing, that this emotional awareness is something that should be taught very early to children, almost from the very beginning with their ABCs and the very beginnings of the things that you teach them. You have to teach them to become aware of their emotions, and largely emotional outbursts are expunged from education. In fact, if you see a child who's having an emotional outburst, they're usually trying to, tell them to quash it, or to put them into, well, you have to take a time out and you can't be in front of everybody as displaying or acting out. But in fact, teaching someone that their emotions are unwelcome and that they have to be pushed away and encapsulated and not felt is maybe not the worst thing that you can do, but it's a very bad thing, because it doesn't allow the emotion expression, but it turns itself into like a cyst, or like a bomb, something that will explode later, and maybe even with greater force, because you've contained it.
You stuffed it into a bag somewhere.
Stuffed into a bag, and it can become psychosis. It can become unrealized trauma. It can become, a bit of the pain body if you do that repeatedly, and you stuff down and don't allow yourself to feel like any negative emotion. There's also a sexual dimorphism in the way emotions are allowed in children. Generally speaking, women are encouraged not to display anger, and generally speaking, boys are encouraged not to display sadness. And these two things are both incredibly powerful emotions. When you feel sad, you feel sad. You can feel devastated. Even as a child, we say, "Oh, it's just a child; they're just crying about." But that's not true. Their emotion is just as valid, even though perhaps what's triggering it may not be as devastating as, something that may trigger the same emotion in an adult, but the energy is the same. Anger, similarly, when a child is angry, if you've ever seen a 2-year-old in a complete meltdown, either of anger or of sadness, you know that they're feeling it pretty strongly. They're certainly willing to throw themselves on the ground and tear holes in the rug, or just cry uncontrollably with, every orifice streaming with tears and every other thing just because they're letting their emotion come up. They're not suppressing anything. But if you then teach them through negative reinforcement that that's bad, get a hold of it. But you have to do it in such a careful way. You have to make them aware, make them a partner, let them understand that this is normal, natural, that you should feel sad, that yes, it's so terrible that whatever happened made you feel sad or mad, but let them get it out, because that allows you an aware expression of the energy, and to see that it comes and it goes, like the little monk with the fear. But yet we don't do that, and it is it is really a detriment. Oh, well, now I'm afraid, and I'm going to be angry about the fact that we have to go back to the studio. I'm not going to be either one of those things, but we should go back to the studio. I'll cease narrating this exit, and we'll pick it up on the other side with more living.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Brag Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, man. Tonight we're talking about living your life, really, but it's from the point of view of what many people do, which is that they don't live their lives, they narrate their lives, they tell themselves stories, and they actually take and use stories as an analog of life. And the range that we've been going through is in essence, what engenders these stories. And one of the big triggers for stories is emotion. And training children young, we went out to break with this, training children young to recognize their emotions and realize that it doesn't require a story, it just requires a space. Emotion is a basic, most emotions, I would hesitate to say all, but almost all emotions are basic survival instincts, and they power our basic survival instincts. Certainly the biggies, fear and anger, the fight or flight reaction, is something which is important you can see it throughout nature. When an animal is threatened, it will either respond with aggression or it will take flight. Sometimes both. It'll have both. Similarly, the emotion of sadness is perhaps on top of these. It's something that you don't see necessarily in all animals, but you do see it in some. Certainly see it in elephants. You see it in porpoises and dolphins. You see it in chimps. You see it in many of let's say, the more advanced animal species. They actually have seen and witnessed grieving among elephants, grieving among chimps, grieving for that which is a loss. Emotion, the sadness emotion, is almost always associated with loss. So when you realize that you had something and now you no longer have it, the emotion of sadness comes up. They talk about, again, the survival instincts of banding together into a group and being able to share community. The happiness, the joy, the sharing of community is something which comes, again, from more socially organized animals, and human beings share in that. But we have a whole range of emotions which are important for our very beings. We have to make spaces for them and to use the mental aspect to suppress them, which is what children are unfortunately a lot of times taught. You don't be angry, don't be sad, don't do this, don't do that. And if you take that in at the mental level and say, well, being sad, I can't be sad, or being mad, I can't be mad, it can become toxic. So what happens, therefore, with these repressed and suppressed emotions is sometimes they are triggered. They rise up, and they aren't. We are not aware of them until they come up into our thoughts and start to take over our narration, our story that we're telling ourselves. And if they do get associated with what you were speaking about last half hour, the pain body, or even the bloodline, the bloodline energies, then you have something which not only is currently taking you over, but is feeding that historical, that either that old trauma in you, or sometimes almost always it's always connected also back to traumas that you were handed, that you're carrying forward, bloodline traumas and bloodline entities which require feeding. And those, if you're just narrating your life, those take over the story, and they completely overwhelm you and take you out of yourself, out of consciousness, into the past almost always, to feed this dead energy, to feed this corpse in essence.
Yes, the past is not real. But when you're in the story and it's a thought and then the emotion trigger, a thought and another emotion trigger, just amplification, it brings you into this realm where it all feels real again. like you're re-experiencing it. And when that happens, you have to realize you are feeding this negative entity. If you wondered whether or not you had one, this is a pretty good sign. What I'd like to bring up is emotions are very... Sometimes you have multiple feelings coming at you at one time. And I remember trying to get the boys to be able to understand and feel the emotions that they're feeling. And one of the kids was always, he'd rather just like throw it to the side. And I remember asking him, well, what are you feeling now? He's like, I'm confused. Okay, let's break this down. And trying to work it through so that he can see that the confusion is because he's disappointed, angry, frustrated, and sad. They mash all those together, and he got confused. But to be present enough to be able to draw back and say, okay, these are the emotions. And there's no pejorative on them. You're just acknowledging that this is the feeling that you are having right now. Half of it, the frustration and the emotional buildup, is because you yourself are not aware of the separation of these different frequencies. You're taking them all in this giant ball, and then it becomes overwhelming. So to be aware of that is usually the first thing. And that is something that you have to work with the kids, some more than others. Some kids just know exactly what they're feeling. No problem, I will tell you. In fact, our third son is the one who was very in touch with his emotions. And I just remember when he was little, he just turned to me, and there's tears in his eyes running down his face. So it was a moment where he remembered something about his brother, who was no longer there. And this is he and I have more of a nonverbal communication. So my hand came out and just touched him on his back. And he looked at me and said, Mom, sometimes you remember something and you just have to cry. It's like, yeah, exactly. Because he felt the sadness, the emptiness, the grieving. It's all there. But that response is so direct, clear, and clean. And that's really where we're to be, not overlaying with, oh, it's because of this happened, and they're disappointed, and it's like that's a narrative. You are telling yourself. You must let that go and see the emotions as they are. And sometimes it's not pretty, okay? Some people are like that. They're triggered because in their family the anger used to make them crazy. So now, I'd rather not everybody show anger. It's like, well, anger is there, rises up, you need to deal with it. But you don't need to negate it as a possible feeling, especially for a child. So the presence that you're teaching at that point is being able, it's a half a step back. It's like, what am I feeling? I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm perplexed.
Fearful.
Worried.
Worried.
Because the anger is a very broad category. You've got to break that down.
Yes. There's a very fine point that you just made, and I just wanted to illustrate it. Being in presence and breaking down emotions into identifiable chunks. but not doing the second thing. The thing that people go right into is judging the emotions. I shouldn't be angry, or why am I angry, or this one made me angry, which is a lovely statement. You're making me angry. The emotion rises. Now, there's been a lot of research, I won't go into it, but emotions rise based on triggers which you don't consciously perceive. They're at a subconscious level. They're triggers. And the emotional storm rises from the body. The emotion comes from the body. And when it finally gets to your mind, it's already full blown. It's coming in hot. It's crashing into your mind and your thoughts. And at that point, the mind starts to do a couple of things. One thing is what Margaret described, is you can start to identify, oh, I'm angry, without any judgment. Just perceive it. And then don't go into whys and wherefores and how comes. But the whys, wherefores, and how comes are what the next part comes into your mind, is to justify, oh, I'm angry because, or that one always makes me, or this always makes me angry, and I shouldn't be angry because anger is bad, and then and you run off into the becauses and the judgments and the thoughts and the why is so and so making me angry, just making yourself more angry, and then as Tole was saying, you build it up, and then all of a sudden you explode outward in words and in thoughts and in actions no longer under your conscious control. The anger has awakened an entity within you, which will now cheerfully, happily take over your fingers, your mouth, your lips, your eyes, your everything, and you'll just whoosh. Now, we've all seen that, where somebody just gets triggered and then seemingly almost immediately afterwards they explode. But the whole process of getting to explosion happens within. The entity rises, the emotion rises first, and the entity sees that energy, latches onto it, gets that story going in your mind, gets all the energy, every part of you. You're seething, your teeth are clenched, you're sweating, your eyes are glaring. You are in full emotional override with all your thoughts primed, and then you turn around and have it all like a giant lightning ball in Dragon Ball Z, gush, coming out of yourself and right onto your target. Now, maybe in some survival mode that's appropriate, but we use all that with all the judgment and all the stuff on top of it to turn ourselves into raging demons for a period of time. And then there is always, after this refractory period when you're kind of still feeling angry, but you're not screaming anymore, there's this kind of afterwards where you go, if you're honest, you say, well, why did I get so angry? You know, that's not me. Or the person who's next to you who witnessed this said, you know, you kind of turned into kind of like a demon there for a while. And you did. So you to head it off, the point is that you made, Margaret, is that you can't stop the emotion, you can't stop the trigger, you can't stop any part of that. But when it comes into your consciousness has to be defended enough to say, an event, an emotion is here. Hello, emotion. What are you? Oh, you're anger. Well, I've been angry before, and I know what will happen. I will feel bad. I will feel mad. Maybe my toes will start to twitch and my eyes will start to flame a bit, but I'll just kind of let mad be there for a while, and I'll just feel mad, and I'll think to myself, yeah, that's how I feel when I'm mad. And give it a space, but like a giant ocean that you give a basin to, it just kind of fills the basin. But if you give an ocean just a tiny little crack to come through, it comes roaring through. You know, it breaks things, and it tears the wall apart, and it comes streaming through the gap. You've got to give it the space that it can fill, not calmly, but at least safely, you know?
Well, when you realize that your consciousness is quite capable of making infinite space, you have to do that to allow yourself to see what it is, to to know that you are well capable of making a space, an ocean if necessary, for this to rise up and fill, and you stand there and acknowledge that this is the emotion that I'm feeling right now. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no judgment here. It just is.
You own it.
Yes, and now I see it. And then you'll know that that amazing amount of energy is part of you. It's just at the wrong frequency. How do we transform this? And it has to do with being in the heart connection, to be able to acknowledge, to love yourself enough to say, this is what rage looks like if I transformed it into fire and a space for this fire to burn. This is what rage looks like. And give it space to burn. The part of you that is that energy will say, okay, there's a space for us and we are being acknowledged. We can let go. And that's an amazing gift you can give yourself. We can let go because we are seen by our consciousness and we don't need to hang on to it any longer. It's an absolutely transformative moment when you give yourself over to that, because the love has got to fill you, and you can only get that with a connection with Spirit. Spirit will raise you high enough to give you the perspective to see how vast that energy actually is. And it doesn't need to destroy you.
That's a wonderful analogy. You know, that you're in essence acknowledging how much power you have.
And it doesn't need to be turned on yourself.
No.
It just needs to be acknowledged that it is present in that moment of now.
And if I wanted to make sure that I heard you correctly, what you're basically saying is your consciousness expands, because this consciousness is infinite, and says, I don't care how big this energy is. It is still within me, and it is part of me. I acknowledge it. Look at the amount of flame that I can contain, that is part of me. It is not all of me, that I don't enter the flame and become the flame. I just say, wow. And then you can then realize that the vastness of your consciousness is so large that it can contain, the anger of all spirit. God's righteous anger, if you will, is quite the force, but it never takes over that which is all spirit, all consciousness. In a similar way, that which rises up from us, our emotions, is still not us. It is no more than a thought, no more than an emotion, no more than a piece of us.
Well, it's acknowledging that there is this vastness within you, and most people are afraid of that. When you get a glimpse of the amount of power that rises up within, most people are frightened out of their minds.
Literally.
So they try to stem it off. They try to squeeze it down so that it doesn't come through. But that's not what's needed right now, because it's you trying to talk to you to acknowledge the vastness of who you are, and you're too afraid of yourself.
And you've split yourself into at least two entities there, if not more.
Well, you squeeze yourself down and say, oh no, I can't feel this right now. So that part of you that has that incredible energy has to contain it and is off somewhere until you're ready. So are you ever going to be ready? Because that is a huge transformational change within you as a human being, to admit that there is this huge well of power within. and it's not pejorative. Okay, some people, oh yeah, I have a lot of power. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with it. It's getting to know your nature as it is. And that is the journey that's down here. Most people would rather, that scares them, so they'd rather look at somebody else and have them tell them, well, what'd you see? So that's how it's got to be. Let me go through a redirect here and see what someone else says about it. It's like, no, that's not what this is.
Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier about, and this is true of many, many children. There's an honesty of acceptance. I'm sad, and the honesty of opening your consciousness and allowing that well of sadness to come up, and then to just say, in essence, without any emotion or pejorative, sometimes you just have to be sad, and then you've given it the space. You've given it all the space you want. You be as sad as you want. I'll still have space for my sadness, and sadness will fill you up to the however much space you give it. You let it fill.
It's not filling you. You have given it the space.
Right. It will fill that space that you give it. I didn't mean fill you and all of you. You will open yourself up. You'll give it that space. It will fill it, but then it will. Just as tides come in, it will go back down. But, and this is what what you were saying. You see how vast the ocean was. You say, wow, the space that I gave this, that it filled, and there's more yet. Mm-hmm. I wasn't as sad as I could possibly be. I am vast beyond my own thoughts and imaginings. And then you start to think, wow, my own thoughts and imaginings don't even realize how vast I
am. You've begun to introduce yourself to your true human nature.
Exactly. And to suppress it is to deny oneself, and to, in essence, make oneself smaller. And yet those pieces are there, and they will come back with a vengeance.
Yes. And I believe we've reached the end of our show.
No! Making me sad. Anyway, you're right. So I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.